And now it's my great honor to invite my friends and also the most important female AI ethicist, I would say, to me, at least to me, Danit Gal, the technology advisor of the UN, and also associate fellow from the Livium Center for the Future of Intelligence at Cambridge, to deliver our first invited talk on global cooperation on the ethics of AI, a look at East Asia. But before that, I would like to invite Danit to give some words for your understanding of AI for SDG think tank, and from your perspective, would you like to welcome this kind of efforts, and also would you like to join us for this exploration? Danit, for you.
Thank you so much for this. I am so excited and so honored to speak again with BAAI. I have been a big fan from the start, and it's truly a genuine pleasure to see the community flourish and the research become so much more complex and advanced. It's a genuine pleasure to watch. Yes, I would absolutely love to join the AI for SDGs think tank, and so will my team in the UN leading efforts on digital coordination and cooperation. We are very, very excited about this. I would really like to echo USG Fabrizio's comments. We are at awe with the idea of using open source development. We really think that is the way to go in terms of digital cooperation, and we very much look forward to welcoming everyone who would want to join both the AI for SDGs think tank and the work on digital cooperation, because they must go together. And from our perspective, having basically BAAI as the implementer of the digital roadmap in China and the lead on that, they must go together. So definitely, thank you so much, and warm congratulations for this very important initiative.
Thank you, Danit. Can you open up your camera and share your screen now? Okay.
Thank you. Can you see it?
Yes, we can. And
perfect.
I cannot wait for your talk. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So my talk will be on global cooperation on AI ethics, and it would be a look at East Asia. So just to set the scene, in a recent essay that I contributed to the Shanghai Institute for Science of Science, the AI governance in 2019, a year in review, I wrote about the need to move from AI principles to implementation, which is also what the AI for SDGs think tank is doing. The essay concludes that such implementation will differ across countries, and that only when we understand what these differences can mean, can we have a meaningful global conversation on the ethics of AI. However, when writing this presentation, I came to ask another question. Will understanding the difference in implementation suffice to create meaningful global cooperation on the ethics of AI? And I have to say, I'm not so sure. Here's the first part. Let's take a look at AI ethics in East Asia, just a small sample. This is based on a research I conducted for the Oxford Handbook of Ethics of Artificial Intelligence called Perspectives and Approaches in AI Ethics East Asia, and it has been published and will soon be in distribution. So the spectrum that you see in front of you is a spectrum that I use to conceptualize how AI ethics in Asia look like. And I found that one of the most distinct features, not just in East Asia, but in AI ethics principles in general, is how humans and AI interact. We can all agree that privacy is important. We can all agree that sustainability is important, even though I think BAAI was basically the first one to come out and really say it on sustainability. But there are a lot of terms that we use that are very similar, and we can't really identify the differences between them. So let's have a look at South Korea and their idea of the interaction between AI and humans. And I characterize it as shared social responsibility. Now, this idea of shared social responsibility emerged as early as 2007, when basically South Korea established a clear human over machine hierarchy to avoid disrupting a delicate balance between individual and collective good. And that was under the robotics ethics principles. Now, in discussing human-centered AI, or the idea of interactions between humans and AI, the South Korean government emphasizes the need to avoid antisocial development. Antisocial development is defined, according to them, as AI that distracts and detracts from human communications and interactions, something that would seek to replace humans in a way that would harm human interaction. To avoid such antisocial development, the South Korean government holds users, developers, and companies responsible in the advancement of AI ethics. This is a fairly novel approach that really places responsibility on users for the way that they use and consume AI. So that is certainly a distinct approach. Moving on to China, we have the idea of human AI harmony, which the USG mentioned, and also Yi Zhang has been one of the main, I would say, voices of. So the idea of human AI harmony captures a special place in Chinese tradition and published Chinese ethics principles, aiming to guide development that is in harmony with humans. This is an exceptional concept that we don't really see anywhere else. Although the discussion is ongoing, the harmonious AI principles that were co-authored by Yi Zhang and really led by him have suggested that shared principles for humans and AI should and can be developed for a strategic future with a common destiny. That really takes into consideration that this is a two-way street. It's not just about the humans, it's also about the AI, and it's also about how they interact together. Now, it remains to be seen how this will translate into Chinese AI policy. I think that there are a lot of efforts underway to explore what human AI harmony would look like in the Chinese context. But I think it would also certainly filter down into AI education, training, and development in China, and I cannot wait to see how this materializes. Finally, we have Japan, which is on the far spectrum of partner with ideas of co-evolution and coexistence. It's not too different from the human AI harmony, but Japan does have a different take on this. So the idea emerged in Japan's Society 5.0 vision, which seeks to create a future where humans and intelligent machines co-evolve and coexist in a fully technologically enabled society. Now, this takes on a special characteristic when you think about the Japanese Society for Artificial Intelligence. They had an ethics principles, I think it was principle number 9, that advances this vision. It basically said that AI must follow the above principles if it wishes to become a member or quasi-member of society. And including AI as a member or quasi-member of society is, I would say, the boldest vision of partnership that we have seen to date. Japan considers this integration of technology into society an economic boon, and that means alleviating national loneliness, which I will discuss later on, and also addressing challenges posed by a super aging society, not too dissimilar to other Asian countries. So I think we will see interesting developments on that front. How does this compare to some of the sampled AI ethics principles in the European Union and the United States? In the European Union, they have the EU Humane AI Project. And it basically said that this new approach works towards AI systems that augment and empower all humans by understanding us, our society, and the world around us. The European Commission added that AI technology should be developed in a way that puts people at its center and is thus worthy of the public's trust. It also specified that AI applications should empower citizens and respect their fundamental rights. They should aim to enhance people's abilities, not replace them. This creates a very clear human over machine hierarchy that we saw in South Korea, where basically the entire development is around humans, what they need, what the society needs, and how AI can provide that. Some US-based scholars looked at the same questions. And for example, the MIT Human-Centered AI Collective said that AI system must continually improve by learning from humans while creating an effective and fulfilling human-robot interaction experience. What would it mean to have an effective and fulfilling human-robot interaction experience is something that they're looking at. But if you look at it from different cultural perspectives, that answer could be very different. The Stanford Human-Centered AI Institute said that if AI is to serve the collective needs of humanity, it must incorporate an understanding of what moves us, physically, intellectually, and emotionally. It is critical that we design machine intelligence that can understand human language, feelings, intentions, and behaviors, and interact with nuance in multiple dimensions. Now, this is a very detailed description of what a good human AI interaction would look like. But again, it is very much focused on the human with the AI kind of geared up to serve the human. So what is the difference? Well, the language concerning the need for compatibility between humans and AI is similar in English. The focus is different. Again, some Western discourse focuses on AI understanding human, while some East Asian discourse focuses on humans and AI understanding each other. And that's a significant difference. And let me show you how. This difference may not strike you as important. You may say, okay, I don't really, potato. I have to say, I think that for the adoption and use of AI by the general public, it can prove critical. Let's have a look at techno-animistic cultures. My research for the Oxford Handbook of the Ethics of AI found that techno-animistic cultures are more welcoming and inclusive of technology, leading to higher adoption rates and faster and deeper social embedding. Here you have a robo-monk on your left side that is being developed in a Chinese monastery and used to spread Buddhist messages. On your right, you have the SoftBank robot that is being appropriated to provide ceremonies for the deceased at a lower price. This is a very clear adoption of this technology in something that is very, very personal, religious faith and your farewell. However, techno-animistic cultures can also present a certain instance of social embedding that conflicts with other non-techno-animistic cultures. So on your left, you have a Chinese and a Japanese AI idol that have basically swept audiences around the world and have numerous fans. On the right-hand side, you have a virtual wife from a Japanese company called Gatebox. The virtual wife sounds like a fairly niche, I would say, invention, but it sold out before it was even available, and they were invested by a very big Japanese communication company. So what does this mean? You have all these niche developments. How does that really affect real-life AI that we're using? And here's a powerful example of a company that understood this difference and found a way to benefit from it to some extent, Microsoft. So it all started with Tay. Tay was a chatbot that was released into the wild on Twitter and came back as a Nazi misogynist 24 hours later. It was a failed experiment, got a lot of very negative media coverage. However, Microsoft Asia research team that is based in China took that project and turned it into the world's most successful social chatbot to date called Xiao Ice. Xiao Ice has had 660 million interactions so far and is considered to be almost a conversational marvel to some extent. On the foundation of Xiao Ice, they created Rena, the equivalent chatbot for the Japanese audiences, which is also quite popular. They tried to go back to Western audiences by creating Zoe. Zoe is supposed to be this politically correct chatbot, and it did have some hundreds, thousands of interactions, but it never really gained the popularity that the Microsoft chatbot gained in East Asia. So this is an interesting experiment of how this really succeeded in East Asia, where people were willing to have meaningful conversations and communications with an AI, but not so much in the West. So if Microsoft didn't succeed, how are we to really pursue global cooperation on the ethics of AI? Let's discuss some of the barriers that we need to address in order to do that, based on just this one example. One barrier that we must address is context. Interactions between human and AI are often contextualized differently between Western and East Asian users and developers. To one person, having a robo-monk is a wonderful idea. To another person, not so much. We need to be able to discuss these communications and share the context. The problem that we really have is that the context plays a significant role that we do not address in the resulting acceptance and adoption of AI, leading to different development and use trajectories. If a conversational AI chatbot is so successful in Asia, it only stands to reason that Microsoft would put in more resources to develop that. However, if it tries to take it back to the West, it fails. These differences in opinion, development, and use, if not properly communicated, remain unaddressed and hinder cooperation. How can we have meaningful cooperation on technology that one culture warmly accepts and the other completely rejects? That brings us to the second barrier, communication. Contextual differences can be difficult to communicate, considering how deeply they are embedded in our cultural and societal fabric. Techno animistic cultures really emanate from ancient Buddhism. How can you explain that to someone who did not grow up in this environment? Even as a person who is obviously an outsider to this environment, I had a very hard time understanding the very minute details of the cultural and social societal fabric that made technology so warmly accepted. So this leads to the known predicament in global conversations on AI ethics. We use the same language, English, to communicate similar principles, like privacy, like sustainability, and hopefully recognize there are different implementations. I hope that people do. But why are there different implementations? Our inability to effectively communicate our differences lead to our inability to effectively communicate on how to address them. So far it's simple. We recognize what the differences are, understand what is the contextual basis that they come from, and learn how to communicate that. Think of it as global therapy. But it's not that simple, because we have a third C word, competition. We made AI competitive technology, and we all know how well that story ends because we have seen this time and again. But we lack incentive to communicate because we compete. And that is the biggest problem that we have, because we're not even looking to find the context and we're not even looking to communicate it. The monetization and politicization of AI feed off of contrasting narratives and the lack of communication. This is where some buzzwords and ideas that you heard, like AI arms race or AI domination equals world domination, come in. They're viciously used by the media to try to basically pit countries and companies against each other in ways that really do not contribute to anyone. Without meaningful incentive to address and resolve our differences, we can't solve them. We just continue to compete. And we're creating this idea of a race to the bottom, where everyone tries to be better than the rest, and no one really agrees on what should be done. So if you use AI that is developed from two companies or countries that do not cooperate, you may be using entirely different projects and products that cater to very specific values that may or may not fit your own values. So what can we do to address this? One, we can explore, understand, and communicate our differences in ways that lead to effective cooperation instead of competition. Second, we can create meaningful incentives for cooperation in non-competitive areas. For example, the Sustainable Development Goals. It's a non-competitive goal, and everyone would benefit from creating it, especially by using open source, just like the USG mentioned, and just like Yizheng introduced. We're able to create a cooperative environment that faces no competition and everyone can benefit. So that's why I'm a very big supporter of the AI for SDGs think tank. The third thing you can do is you can join us in working toward global cooperation on AI ethics and otherwise. What does it mean to join us? Let me explain. The USG introduced the SG's roadmap for digital cooperation that was just released. Within that digital roadmap, the Secretary General announced that he intends to establish a multi-stakeholder advisory body on global artificial intelligence cooperation. We are in the process of building the world's most inclusive and informative body when we really, really need your help. And that is when I turn to my distinguished Chinese colleagues all over who are watching this presentation. Please join us. We have been tremendously lucky to have the Beijing Academy for AI really lead the path with us, but we would definitely benefit from more. And I believe that with you, we could really achieve a more inclusive and more informed platform that can support not just China, but many other countries around the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danit. So we've been interacting with each other in many occasions, many conferences, but for each of the time when you hear about Danit's contribution to the field is really, really unique for every of her talk. Thank you so much for not only for speak about the AI ethics in East Asia from your perspective, but also to putting them in a global context so that everybody can see in which way we can contribute to the global landscape. And most importantly, at the end, like Danit says, in which way we can join the exploration as multi-stakeholders for the future of not only of AI, but of the future for humanity, society, and environment, and nature in general. Thank you so much. Danit, you are actually, I must say that big thank you to you, because for now it's your evening time, and actually we were planning to invite Danit for a later session today for the discussion on linkage for East and West contribution to AI ethics and governance. But right at that time, it would be the very morning for Danit, like 3 a.m. in New York. So we wouldn't do that. So I would leave some time also for Danit to speak a few words or something you would like to say to really make the East and West cooperation happening. Or do you have any concerns, or do you have any questions to ask the Chinese AI industry or the Chinese AI practitioners in general, so that we can push forward the cooperation together? Back to you, Danny.
Thank you for this. And thank you so much for sparing me participation at 3 a.m. I really appreciate it. I mean, I think that the idea behind meaningful digital cooperation obviously requires a very broad exploration. I mean, I really only touched the tip of the iceberg of the issues that we would have to address. But as someone who has moved from the UK to China to study in China and to really engage with the Chinese AI and AI ethics, I have been a very big supporter of the discourse here, because I think that the discourse in China is incredibly rich, is very tradition-based, is very localized. And I think that that is something that the community abroad has to learn to respect. There obviously are many points of alignment, as there should be, because this is about digital cooperation, but there's also something about respecting the cultural uniqueness that exists in China and elsewhere in a way that allows us to accept differences and cooperate despite them. I mean, reaching global consensus, and I can now say after working in the UN, is not easy. It's almost an impossible task to achieve. And I think the best way forward is what I have seen in my personal work and interaction throughout the years with you and many other colleagues, is that we have to be respectful and seek to understand the deeper context, understand where certain development trends and uses come from, and realize that even if we don't agree on every single aspect of it, we can still develop technology that is meaningfully ethical, sustainable, and safe for everyone. So is there anything that I would really like to stress is respect the differences, strive towards common goals, and understand that there are numerous ways that you can reach any kind of goal that you would like by just virtue of trying to sit and understand, listen, and accept.
Thank you so much, Danit. It's really great to have you, not only for last year, but also for this year, for our event in here. I'm actually, we'll start to consider we need to welcome you again, maybe to the third version for our BAAI conference. Thank you so much for your generous contribution, not only for your talks, but also for making, for supporting AI for SDG think tank, and also the research program in many ways at the very starting point, talking to your colleagues at the UN and to support these tryings. And also we've been actually very looking forward to future interactions in any way, not only Beijing Academy of AI, but also the AI industries in China and AI scientific communities in China to contribute to the realization of the digital roadmap. So please also bring words back to your team at the UN that Beijing Academy of AI will fully support the realization of digital roadmap from the UN Secretary General. And like I said, not only us, but also scientists and practitioners in China, if I could represent them for now, to fully support your exploration. And your exploration is not only for UN, but also for the whole humanity. Thank you so much, Danit. We will welcome you maybe for the third version for our event. Thank you so much for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It is my honor and pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much.